What's happening? We're back. Good to see everybody. What's up, Victoria? What's up, Chris Hoffman? Ray Hogan in Connecticut. What's going on in Connecticut, Ray? Good to see everybody. I'm excited about today's show. I hope that you are too. Lots going on. Lots to talk about. We're going to jump right into it. Not here to cha-cha around today. Let's bring on our good friend and supporter, Lori Dawn. What's up?
I was just cha-cha-ing, actually. I was just doing a little cha-cha.
It's cha-chaing. No time to cha-cha around.
Getting ready for this weekend.
There's lots going on this weekend.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about it. You know, we're going to talk about it right now.
Yeah.
And a couple of, what's up, Gregor? What's up, David? Brian Matson, what's up? Larry Kelly, home sick, but not too sick to watch the show. You know, what's up in the UK, John?
Maybe we're like new prices.
How's the weather?
Yeah. We're like the new Price is Right. Everybody will watch us when they're sick.
Yeah. Hey, listen, that's okay.
Comforting.
Hey, you know what I want to deal with right off the bat? I want to tell everybody out there, if you don't know by now, that 1 week from today, Wednesday, April 16th. Hold on. Let this. Could you hear that siren? It's New York life.
New York in the spring.
I hear that shit all day long. All day long. Wednesday, April 16th, which is 1 week from today. Yes, we are doing a Al Burrill tribute with Jamie Sharap and Chris Foley from SSD, Nancy Burrill, Dwayne Lucia from Gallery East, Eugene Robinson from Whipping Boy and Oxbow, and very special guests. Got a couple bangers coming on as special guests. So yeah, I just want to let everybody know it's kind of like a bonus show. It's, you know, it's like the old days during the pandemic, you know, just putting it in there. But apparently coming up on Saturday is this. Why don't you tell us what's going on here?
Well, as you all know, on Friday, it's the high holy day of Elisa's birthday. So her friends in Shatterhand decided to make it a little party for her. So it's their EP release party up at Joey's in beautiful Port Chester, New York. Going to have a bunch of metal bands there. And we're going to be celebrating Elisa's birthday as well. So come on up if you're within reach. We'll all be there. Get some.
Hey, Port Chester, New York, home of the Capitol Theater.
Yes.
So for those that know, big tie-in on today's show. So
yes.
Yeah, that's coming up on this Saturday. I'm going to be up there probably with the Phonic Rochelle.
Yes.
And so if you're up there early, I'll be there. I can't stay too late because, of course, the next day, the night before we're playing.
Yes.
We're playing at Pugs in Staten Island. And then the next day is the big banger at the free all ages Sunday matinee at Joey Ramone Place. We're playing with CMI, Conservative Military Image. So
yeah, but Saturday night, a bunch of us will be up there. Come early for dinner. Joey's is also a pub restaurant, so you can grab something to eat before the show, and then bang your head and throw up your dinner all over the place. So yeah.
And what is this exactly?
So this here is another thing going on a little further up in New York, in Kingston, New York. This is Rally in the Valley, Volume 1, put on by DCPC Live. That's Scott. He's got a record label that specializes in live recordings of all your favorites. So we've got Rebelmatic, the Loosketeers, RBNX. They've got two bands.
Well, it wouldn't be like a Valley, upstate New York show without RBNX, right?
Well, there you go. I mean, they're like the mayors, right? You got to have them.
Yeah.
I think it's the law, as a matter of fact. You have to have them on your show.
That's right.
So So anyway, Shark Noises and the Whiskey Bats are going to be celebrating some DCP live releases, and it's just going to be a great show. It's got a lot of our favorites on there. Chum Huffer, a bunch of bands, and we're proud sponsors of the event. 2-day event starts at 5 on Saturday, 4 on Sunday. It's only $15 for both days. I mean, it's going to be a good time. So
what's the venue? Is it a racetrack?
So, it's at Snapper McGee's.
Snapper McGee's.
Which, like, right there, who doesn't want
I like how it's like Rally in the Valley. You're thinking it's like Daytona racetrack, and it's Snappy McGee's. Come early.
It sounds like a good time, though.
Get a cheeseburger, So that's that. And then, another thing that I know you want to mention, and Larry Kelly and our friends up at Bridge 9, you guys, this is going down, right?
Yeah. So as you know, we've been getting some really cool art shows going up at Bridge 9, and we managed to capture the man. Chris Robots Will Kill. I think a lot of people will be very, very familiar with his work. But he's going to do a solo show up at Bridge 9, June 7th. That's Saturday. Come on up. We're going to be celebrating Bridge 9's 30th anniversary year. And they're going to have a couple of cool collaborations going on. So you're not going to want to miss that. And it's going to be a whole show of just Chris Robots Will Kill. So it's going to be really, really cool.
And for those, a connection here, Chris Robots Will Kill, his nephew was fairly recently on the show. That's Andrew from Combust.
Yes.
Is Chris Robots from
Correct.
Yeah.
And Chris is a huge fan of the hardcore scene. So I think a lot of people will probably be familiar with him, and it's going to be a good day. So we'll have more details as they unfold.
Is that right, Ray Hogan? Dylan left Mings Never Die. Mings, where Mings never die. Okay. Dylan left Mings Never Die.
Yes.
Right. Hey, are you Johnny Rock? You're going to be up there on Saturday in Portchester? I will be there for the dinner and for the beginning of the evening, and then I have to go home.
Yeah.
One thing we need to mention is this has been announced: the Upstage Music Fest in Clearfield, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
They just announcing the lineup here. It's E-Town Concrete, Sworn Enemy, Methyscoples is on the bill.
Kings Never Die.
Kings Never Die.
Mings Never Die.
Mings Never Die.
Mings
Never Die. Incendiary Device, we're playing. Extinguish the Code and Brass Knuckle. Johnny's playing it. Johnny's playing the show. Okay. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, the Upstage Music Fest has been announced. ID is playing it. Yes, we are driving to 300 hours out to play Clearfield, Pennsylvania. But
and Women of the Pit are sponsoring this event along with a bunch of other sponsors. So it's going to be a really cool day out. I think is it a 1 day or a 2 day? I think it's a 1 day.
I think they're packing all this in 1 day because the night before there's some Leonard Skinner tribute band.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Which I'm kind of down to see the Leonard Skinner tribute band. And the night before that's wrestling. So we'll see. Yo, Matt Gray, is that near you, Matt? Clearfield, PA? Is that near you in the Poconos? If it is, you better come. Better come, brah.
I think it's about an hour further from the Poconos.
All right.
I know it was too far of a drive for me, unfortunately, but we'll be sponsoring it and sending stickers.
There you go. No, out further from me. Is that Matt? I know it's out further from you, but is that like the forbidden zone? Like you can't go in that direction? Like something like don't go there. Like in Planet of the Apes, it's the forbidden zone, or can you actually go an hour in that direction, Matt? So, what's up, Dom? We'll see you this weekend, bro.
The Amish will stop him.
Is that right? Is that right? August 9th? Is that the day Jerry Garcia passed? Is that right?
Huh.
Lots of weird things going on today. I don't know.
Yes, it
All
is.
right, cool.
Okay.
All right, well, there you have it.
Yeah.
Stranger things have happened. All right, good. Well, we'll see you in the jewel of Westchester, Portchester, New York, this Saturday for lots of food,
Where the sun always shines.
And we're going to see Elisa get crazy.
Yes, we will.
I should bring the lampshade.
No, she's gonna behave herself because she wants to get to the show the next day.
Okay. Yeah,
that's the plan.
Right. All right. Sure. Yeah. I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn too.
In any case, it's going to be a really fun night. There's going to be a bunch of us there. So
yeah.
Yep.
All right. Okay. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye. Hey, Dave Engelman, shout out to Portchester, New York. I shared the link for the show with JB and the fans of the Capitol Theater. Thank you. Thank you very much. That said, this is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live, and we are sponsored by the Texas Silver Rush, DTFM Vinyl Distro, Generation Records, Mad Vintage, Women of the Pit, and 126 Hardcore Clothing. They're a streetwear brand for restless individuals who don't compromise. They're about being positive, spontaneous, and true to yourself. For years, they experimented with several printing methods and materials and collaborated with a large number of designers and illustrators, always giving room for fresh perspectives while retaining the hardcore attitude. Get in touch with them. Ramp up your weak-ass clothing game. www.126clothing.com. That said, let's clear the deck. Let's bring our guest on. Here we go. Here we go, yo. Today's guest is an American photographer, producer, and director hailing from the Garden State of New Jersey. Starting out documenting the Grateful Dead experience, he went on to shoot over 300 assignments for Rolling Stone, has been published in Time, Vanity Fair, Guitar Player, BAM, as well as hundreds of other major magazines worldwide. His album photography credits include Primus, NoFX, Pantera, Joe Satriani, Nirvana, and many, many others. Here today to talk to us about the release of Blakesberg Presents Punk, please welcome, coming at us from the city by the bay, San Francisco, Mr. Jay Blakesberg. Hey, man. Yeah. Hey, I got one too, bro. How you doing?
Are you allowed to have hippies that photograph the Grateful Dead on the New York Hardcore Chronicles?
Yeah, you know, we've had Sam Cutler was on the show.
Oh, nice. Do you remember a San Francisco band from like the late 70s called the Popo Pies?
Yeah, they did trucking. They did
yeah. And Jerry Garcia even went and saw them in San Francisco once. There's pictures
of
with them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely remember them. But yeah, I had Sam Cutler, which was a big personal deal for me. And who else? I have Mike Falzerano coming on, and what else? A couple other things here and there, kind of dancing around it, you know. But that said, let's bounce the ball back and forth a little bit.
Sure.
And you know, how did you come up? Did you grow up in a musical household? How did music come into your life?
You know, in the 1970s, when I was growing up in suburban New Jersey, we didn't have the internet to tell us what to do. We didn't have Drew Stone's YouTube show telling us what bands to listen to or what shows to go to. We had to figure out on our own. And, you know, we had to figure out what drugs we liked. So, you know, we smoked weed, we took acid, you know, we snorted powders that had names that we believed were true. And you know, we were I don't know what they call us. We were losers.
Was this Clark, New Jersey?
Clark, New Jersey. You know, it's really interesting because the punk rockers and the hippies are really the exact same thing, right?
Well, hey, welcome to the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live, my friend.
Right, because you know, the hippies and the punk rockers, neither of us wanted jobs. Neither of us wanted to conform to society, right? Neither of us wanted to buy into, you know, a two-car garage, you know, nobody wanted to buy into the birth, school, work, death formula.
100%.
Right? You know, the only difference between the hippies and the punks, essentially, as far as I can see, is that, you know, now that we're all old, I'm 63, now that we're all old hippies and old punks, you know, we wake up in the morning and eat like organic granola for breakfast, and you guys wake up in the morning and eat a Pop-Tart and smoke a cigarette, right?
not necessarily.
I know. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Let me add this. Let me throw this in there, because you just jump way ahead. It's community and culture, isn't it?
Yes.
It's all community and culture.
It's community. You find your people.
That's right.
And then the scene that that those people are in are the people you connect with, right?
That's right.
And so, you know, for whatever reason, Clark, New Jersey in the mid 1970s, we were listening to Southern rock. We were listening to the Allman Brothers and Marshall Tucker and the Outlaws and Charlie Daniels and Leonard Skinner and Neil Young and the Grateful Dead. And you know, but if I grew up in the next town over and those people were listening to Black Sabbath and you know, or the next town after them, they were listening. I mean, you know, by then we had the Ramones, the Talking Heads. You know, it's really funny. I was listening to some Talking Heads the other day. It's so funny that in the late 1970s, they thought of the Talking Heads as a punk band, right? And
they thought of Tom Petty and Elvis Costello as like new wave bands.
Right. I mean, it's just such a joke. So, you know, it's essentially, you know, you're a product of your environment in a lot of ways. Yeah, we have predisposed DNA that says do this, do that. But, you know, who's influencing you? You know, like I got turned on to all this music that I listened to by a guy named Lozzie. He was 2 years older than me in high school. And he was listening to the Derek and the Dominoes and the Allman Brothers and the Grateful Dead and Yes. And he turned me out to these bands, and that's what I listened to. But if that same guy had been listening to the Ramones and, you know, Blondie, which also Blondie punk. I mean, really, you know, I mean, but Chris Stein is, you know, it's all CBGBs. I mean, the Ramones, you know, half, you know, white Jewish kids from Forest Hills that, you know, changed the world. So, you know, there's so many things that determine, you know, your trajectory. And, you know, and I just happen to, you know, take acid and like it and tapped into improvisational psychedelic music. Yeah. And that's what I went with.
It's interesting because you're basically you're about almost 2 years older than me, right? And you know, I grew up in my teenage years. You know, I was in the Bronx, and I talk about this often. In our enclave, interestingly enough, what we all listened to back then was Southern rock. And all the same bands that you just mentioned. And I'm not just talking about the white kids. You know, the Hispanic kids, the black kids, we all had this clique. We loved Southern rock. Allman Brothers Band, Leonard Skinner, Charlie Daniels. And then, you know, that kind of peripherally, you know, ended up, you know, the Grateful Dead, the Jefferson Airplane, Jorma Kaukonen, you know, so on and so forth. But I always sort of trip out on that like I went to John F. Kennedy High School in the Bronx there, and we loved Southern rock. And so this was this was in the air in the late 70s. In the late 70s. What was the first music that what was the first live music what was the first concert you went to?
Okay, I'll tell you that in a second. I'm curious what Francis Sawyer says. Bro, keep naming names. What does that even mean?
I guess when you're going on about bands.
Okay, but anyway, so even though you were listening to that Southern rock type thing when you were in high school, you know, they're sort of your people, but your people really become your people when you become an adult, when you really actually grow up. You know, I mean, think about all the kids that were listening to like the Monkees and David Cassidy and bubblegum pop, you know, when they were 13, 14, 15, but that's not what sent them on their trajectory for their life. You know, somewhere along the way, you got turned on to whatever band. You're about my age, you know. I'll ask you that same question that you just asked me. My first concert was the Doobie Brothers, the Outlaws, and Poco on Halloween night, 1975 at Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
Now, that same night, because you're wearing a Zappa t-shirt, that same night, Zappa was playing at the Felt Forum at Madison Square Garden, the small theater, Halloween night, 1975. I'm pretty sure it was Zappa. And because there were all these people, we were coming from the suburbs in New Jersey on the train into New York City, 30-minute train ride from Rahway, New Jersey to Penn Station. And so again, you're the product of the product that you become. The person you become is the product of the people you're hanging out with and the older people that are influencing you. So Absolutely. In my case, this guy Lazi, my sister, they were a couple years older than me, and they're like, this is what we're listening to. And you tap into it. Like I said, I mean, like I listened to, Black Sabbath Today came on the radio yesterday or the day before on Sirius XM. I'm like, this is not fucking heavy metal. This is fucking bubblegum rock compared to like Propaganda or even Lagwagon, right?
A lot of the stuff that's out there now is,
but I mean they consider Deep Purple and Black Sabbath and Rainbow, like all those bands were like, those were, Rush was considered a fucking heavy band. Yeah. Rush is like fucking Canadian pop, right? So it's just, and they're great and they're brilliant. And, Rush means so much to so many people. I'm not putting them down, but I'm just saying that, when those bands first started, or when we were teenagers and listening to those bands, we didn't understand enough in our little pea brains to it was about community. It really comes back to 100%. That. And once you found your people, right? Once you found your people and really found your people, it's pretty easy. My son, who's 31 now, when he first started listening to music regularly, he had an iPod glued to his hip with ear pods starting in 6th grade, probably, right? Mm-hmm. And he was listening to NoFX, Lagwagon, Blink-182, Green Day, all the Fat Records bands. And I started bringing him to those shows because he liked it. And Fat Mike lived on my block, right? So my son was 12 and hanging out with Fat Mike and Joey from Lagwagon and No Use for a Name, all those, Bay Area punk bands. And he turned me on to it. I mean, if you even go into like Smash Mouth records, right? They have the big hits, right? But if you go deep into any of those records and listen to Greg's songs, right? Greg Camp's songs, they're punk rock songs. They were a punk rock band. They just happen to have 3, 4, 5, big hits in movies, but at their core, they were a punk rock band. And so even if you go past the hits in Smash Mouth, you're hearing great pop punk from, the 90s, right? The late 90s. And I shot 3 or 4 Smash Mouth records. So anyway, so what I'm saying is that, and what I was going to say is that, and then my son gets into high school, right? And drops acid and listens to Radiohead and the Flaming Lips. And he's like, whoa, my head exploded. So like my son, he just went and saw NoFX in Brooklyn when they played there at the end of the summer, I guess it was. He still listens. He's got big ears, my son. Like he'll go see a Fish concert, right? And he'll go see Fish. He'll go see NoFX. He'll call me up and be like, hey, Lagwagon's playing in Denver where he lives. Can you call Joey and get me on the guest list? Like that's who he hung out with when he was 13, but he listens to all the stuff, so he's just as happy listening to a crazy, super psychedelic band like the Flaming Lips. Even the Flaming Lips were considered a punk band in the late 80s when I met them. So anyway, the story is that you're influenced by the people around you. You're influenced by the drugs you're taking, your community, all of these things. But as long as you have big ears, you can like it all.
And I just want to insert that sort of when we were coming up, things were a lot more sort of segregated. It was like, what are you? Are you like a rocker? Are you like what? And like, the lines were drawn. Like if you were into like the Grateful Dead, you were like, a Burnout. And if you were into like, I think in this day and age, the lines are much more blurred.
Everybody has
big ears.
In that same vein. So in the late 80s, right. So I'm known as this Grateful Dead photographer. I still photograph them. It's still my scene. In the late 80s, I'm trying to figure out how to make a career as a photographer, right? And the mainstream magazines had no interest in the Grateful Dead or the Allman Brothers or Southern Rock or Neil Young. They were interested in the new bands that were happening: Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, all this Alice in Chains, Tad, right? They were interested, Jane's Addiction, all this alternative rock. And so I was shooting all of that stuff from day one in the clubs. I shot Jane's Addiction in a 500-person club in San Francisco called the I-Beam. I shot the Dickies. I shot, there you go. There's Chris Cornell in 1990. My college roommate was Soundgarden's front of house sound guy. But I remember being at a Butthole Surfers concert and talking to this person standing next to me. And they were like, and I couldn't say to them, oh my God, this is incredible, but next week I'm going to see 3 Grateful Dead concerts. Right. Because it was like oil and water, oil and, it didn't mix, right? Oil, nobody had big ears that way, right? So I was like, whoa, I had short hair, I wore Doc Martens, like I wasn't a punk rocker, but I was fitting into the scene I was shooting. I was shooting more this, Soundgarden, this kind of stuff than I was shooting Grateful Dead and other, because it was only the Grateful Dead. Now there's a million jam bands out there, right?
Let me spin it. Let me spin it back. Before we get ahead of ourselves. But why photography? What got you into photography? What we've talked about music, but what was the impetus for you, for your interest in photography, and like, what was your first camera, and like, what inspired you to get out there?
So again, when you're 16 years old, we're all trying to figure out our place in the script, right? Who are we?
Yeah.
What's our music? What's our scene? Who are our friends? And so, I liked the art of photography. It inspired me. I was passionate about it even as a teenager. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that you could actually have a career as a photographer, let alone a career that for me is now 45 years going.
Sure.
I didn't realize that you could do those things as a career, but I liked the process of taking pictures, developing the film in the darkroom in my mother's basement, and then making prints and hanging them on my walls of my bedroom and giving them to my friends to hang on their walls, and eventually selling 8x10 prints for $1 or $2 a piece at concerts and to my friends to make drug money and concert money. And so, it was really just me. I liked it. I enjoyed it. It sort of helped me identify who I was a little bit. It gave me a little bit of an identity as that guy.
It goes back to the punk thing. It's like there's room on the boat for everybody in this scene. It's like, if you're not on stage, in a hardcore band, then start a fanzine or take some pictures or promote shows. It's community and culture.
It's DIY, do it yourself.
100%. And I do remember you selling your pictures in the parking lots of the Grateful Dead shows on the East Coast. But before we get there, what was your first camera?
So the first thing I shot, really, I was borrowing, at very first I borrowed my stepbrother's camera a couple times just to shoot some pictures of friends. And then I borrowed my dad's camera.
Was that the Pentax?
The Pentax. Borrowed my dad's camera, shot my first Dead show 9/2/1978, which was a week before I started my senior year of high school. So I was 16 years old and shot the Grateful Dead for the first time. Boom, and then that's it right there, Jerry, on 9/2/78. And then a few months later, for my 17th birthday, my dad bought me a Yashica FR2, I believe it was. And that was my first camera that I shot with. That was mine. And I had that from 17 years old till my early 20s when I started shooting. And then when I went and bought my first Nikon, and I've been a Nikon guy ever since.
Did you have a dark room in the house, or was it a school thing? Yes. So you were just into the whole process of it and going in, because I know it's putting how do I say it? Putting the developing it was just like it's like going to cop the drugs is kind of, for a lot of people.
It's magic, yeah. I mean, every single photography book you've ever seen or read, the coffee table book, and when they ask that question, how do you start? They say, I was in the dark room. I put a blank piece of paper and some liquid, and all of a sudden, the face of Jerry Garcia or whoever it was came up in the developer, and it was a magical, life-changing, transformative moment. We all feel the exact same way. It's happened to all of us. And again, it turned me on. When that picture came up in the developer, it turned me on. And I'm not saying like it turned me on in a druggy way or a sexual way. It just turned me on, and it inspired me, right? And then when you're inspired by things, you become passionate about those things. And when you're passionate about it, you become more inspired. And both of those things sort of feed into each other. Inspiration and passion, they go hand in hand. And everybody needs it in their life, because without it, you have like kind of a boring, without passion and inspiration, you have birth, school, work, death, which of course, is a great song by the Godfathers, right?
Absolutely.
Who I photographed at the I-Beam in the late 80s, birth, school, work, death.
I saw that tour. They were great. That record is fantastic. Let me ask you, what's going on here?
That's me at my first Grateful Dead concert in 1977. And I have a little bong on my chest, and they're playing at Englishtown, New Jersey. It was a giant, legendary concert with 150,000 people, and it was 105 degrees, and I brought my bong, my U.S. bong, with me to the show, and I was just taking a little rest before the show started. You get there, we drove down at 8 a.m. and sat in hours of traffic and got into the venue somehow and found a place and had our little cooler there of whatever liquid was in it. And did bong hits and watched the Grateful Dead, and life has never been the same.
Yeah, and this of course being a legendary show, really a great 1977 show. And I have to say, regarding your second show, which is the first Dead show that you shot, this show at Giant Stadium was my first show. This is the first Grateful Dead show that I saw, which was the Grateful Dead, New Riders, and Willie Nelson, right?
Correct.
At Giant Stadium. And what's really trippy about this is that I was on the floor. This looks like from the angle that I saw the band from. So, I mean,
we were probably hanging out. I was 16, you were 14 or 15.
15 I was 15. And I mean, I was a little farther back, but pretty wild that, here we are all these years later. And this is the first, Dead show you shot, and just real apparent to me, like just sort of elbowed your way up front with that first camera. Tell us about the experience of sort of like what you had to do to get kind of shots like that.
Well, back then we didn't really know what we were doing, but essentially, back then we were I probably stood on a cooler or something like that, or, maybe got on like my friend's shoulders, who the fuck knows, right? Yeah. But, it was a stadium concert with 40, 50,000 people. And I'm probably, probably was 50 or 60 or 100 feet back, and put a telephoto lens on. That's why I brought my dad's camera, because even though I had my camera, I didn't have a telephoto lens at the time. I just had a 50 millimeter lens. So my dad, loaned me his camera with his longer lenses, and I didn't really know how to expose film. I didn't really know how to what I was doing, but I had an eye. Right. Because if I didn't have an eye, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. Right. So
right.
Like, I don't know if you remember, like, when we were 16 years old and we had an Instamatic camera and somebody took a picture of you and it was just from your chin up, and then the rest of it was the wall and the ceiling, because you didn't understand that's how you'd crop, you actually compose a photo where you show the body, not just, like people didn't know how to take a picture. People didn't have that compositional eye. And I guess I had it from a young age. I liked television shows. I liked movies. All of those things inspired me. And then I took fucking acid, and then the whole world fucking changed,
Yeah. I want to just connect a couple dots here. Chris Hoffman says, Donna. Yes, Donna. Take note, please, out there. Take note of this great Ibanez that Bob Weir is playing, but also the guitar that the what's known as the Wolf guitar that Jerry Garcia is playing here. This, of course, being Jay's first show that he shot, and I have to connect it. Where is that? With I think it was just a few months before this show, he went back to playing Wolf from playing those white Travis Beans, what he was playing in 75, 6, and 7. Boom.
There I am, me and the Wolf guitar. Yeah.
Man, that's heavy. That's heavy.
That's a $2 million guitar today.
Yeah. I mean, wow.
Yeah, the guy who owns it is a friend of mine. He lives up in Massachusetts. I'm not sure exactly where, somewhere in the Boston area, I think. Yeah. And he bought it, a few years back. person who owned it before him was a guy named Dan Pritzker of the Pritzker family. And Dan sold it and donated 100% of the proceeds to the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Wow.
To protect the rights of people in our country. And so that guitar is done very good. And then the guy who owns it today, Brian brings it out and lets people play it. He lets people that are in Grateful Dead cover bands playing in bars play it.
That's
he
awesome.
lets, this is
awesome, man.
This is at Citi Field in New York City, and John Mayer played it that night for the first time in front of an audience. And I helped arrange the whole thing to happen between Brian and John.
Yeah.
And so.
Awesome.
So yeah, I had to get a picture taken of me and
I just had to kind of kind of make that connection, and just one more time with this other shot for everybody out there. You see Jay, here's that guitar in 1978. Jay shot this in 1978. Here it is in 78 at Giant Stadium. So that said, I want a little quote. I want to quote you here for a second here. Maybe you could expound on it a little bit, because once we want to make our way through the Grateful Dead and get to the other stuff. And I quote, Jerry Garcia once said, "Following the Grateful Dead truly is the great American adventure." And we took that to heart, and we did that. We went on the great American adventure with the American rock band that had a great American songbook. We lived by those words and traveled by those words and grew to that music and became a family of freaks and misfits. It was the greatest time of our lives, and so zero regrets. Bittersweet, sure. Sweet, absolutely. Beautiful, for sure. Tragic, absolutely. All of the above, because we watched Jerry decline in front of our eyes. Though we didn't realize what was happening at the time, it was. But at the same time, we were having a lot of fun, and we were grooving to that music and that scene all the time, and we loved every minute of it. I love that, man. I feel like you really nailed it, bro. I really,
what book? Where did I write that? Where's that in?
I don't know. I saw it in some interview you did.
Got it. All right.
And I just thought, right on, man. I mean, following, riding the rails with the Dead in the 80s and in the 90s, it really shaped who I am as an adult at this point. It was an incredible experience.
Am I outing you on this show right now that you're really a closet hippie deadhead, or all your punk rock friends already know that?
No, we've talked about this many times.
You're cool with everybody.
Yeah, and we've tripped out on this, the dichotomy of the whole thing. Like I said, we've tripped out on it because back in 81, 82, when I got into hardcore and I shaved my head, I'd go to Dead shows, and my friends at the Dead, that were touring with Dead would go, "Oh man, what are you doing? What happened to the Drew Stone I used to know?" And then I'd come back and hang out with my hardcore friends, and they go, "You went to a Grateful Dead show? Oh man, what happened to the Drew Stone that I used to know?" And I really realized as a young person is, you got to do what you're going to do and follow your heart, man. You're not going to please everybody. Follow your heart.
Fun is fun. Fun is fun, no matter where you find it. And everything offers a unique experience, and that's what we are looking for, is unique experiences that sort of make us who we are. Now we're 60-year-old guys that have seen the punk rockers and seen the hippies, and seen a lot of great music, and one doesn't cancel the other. It's all just fucking fun,
And you kind of out there riding the rails. Here's a reference shot here, right?
That's 1981, right before I got I think actually that's right after I got arrested, but before I cut my hair.
Right. 81, man. That was a great year. That was a great year for that band. I love the 80. I love 1981.
Yeah.
And what's this other? Here's one of your great shots, man. I'm sorry, man, but before I just got to put up this is one of your, to me, this is kind of one of your iconic shots from that era right here.
Yeah, so that's exactly 1 year later from the Meadowlands. That's on 9/1/79. The one before was 9/2/78. And this photo. Do you remember the Aquarian Weekly newspaper?
In Jersey, of course.
And so this got published in the Aquarian Weekly with a picture of Jerry at a show review, and I got paid $7.50 for each of those two photos. I got $15. I was 17 years old. I was a published photographer. I was a paid published photographer at 17 in September 1979.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think
and $15 was enough to buy 2 concert tickets at that point.
There you go. This is this is 79. I know he seems he's on the left side, so I guess it's it's 79, 80, I guess, but
this is New Year's Eve 79, 12/31/79 in Oakland.
Right. SIVA benefit, is that what that was?
No, that actually was the very first. 12/26/79 was the very, very first SIVA benefit. Yeah. And I took a Greyhound bus from New Jersey to San Francisco because I didn't know that there were airlines. I didn't know you could fly across country, so I took a Greyhound.
I know you got jammed up. You mentioned it. You got a little jammed up back then. Listen, a lot of us were wheeling and dealing and hustling, going from show to show, and LSD was a big part of it. I know I was involved in that trade, for a while there. Did getting jammed up a little bit change your whole perspective, on touring and LSD in general?
Well, I went to prison for possession of LSD with intent to distribute, and I still will say that LSD is probably the most important thing that happened to me in my life. Because it blew the doors open. Yeah, I mean, once you go to prison, you don't ever want to go back, or at least I didn't. There was too much fun to be had outside of the prison walls. That's a photo taken by a friend of mine named Elliot Newhouse, and Elliot took that in San Diego, California, in June of 1980. You can see the little Mickey Mouse pin.
I just saw that.
On my chest because the night before, we all went to Disneyland and dropped a bunch of acid. Wow. And had a really good time, and then and that's an Ed Donahue T-shirt.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Ed, one of the most renowned original OG Grateful Dead artists.
Yeah.
He made these incredible shirts that never said Grateful Dead.
Yep.
Never used any Grateful Dead iconography, and they were purely Grateful Dead T-shirts.
And they were beautiful and worth a lot of money today if you have one of those.
I mean, if I have this shirt in that mint condition that it's in right there, that'd be a $3,000 T-shirt.
Yeah.
I just found a tapestry that Ed Donahue gave me back in the day, tie-dyed bed sheet that's got actually I have two of them now. I didn't know I had two. I thought I only had one, but I just found another one.
I swear to God, we're going to get off the Grateful Dead thing in a second, but this is just another one because I remember this. This was fantastic.
Oh, yeah. John Belushi comes on stage at the Capitol Theater in Passaic, New Jersey on March 30th or 31st, one of those days, 1980. Yeah. Apparently, they had told him, Phil Lesh had told Belushi, no, don't come out on stage. And apparently he came out, did a cartwheel on Jerry's side. They grabbed a microphone, brought it out, and he started singing U.S. Blues. Yeah. And then they went to a Dan Aykroyd speakeasy in New York City after the show. They had to go down a hatch through the floor into the basement to get to. Phil told me that story. But that was a legendary moment. I was really, I think there's two. There's the other shot from that show that I think there's two photos that are in focus and exposed properly. The roll of film, because I think there was a lot of drugs involved. And these shows right there, right? And it's also April 9th, 2025. So
the next day was the April Fool's show where they came out and all played different instruments, and we were like, what the fuck? They came out and started playing Promised Land, and we were like, what's going on?
Yeah,
and they were like, April Fools. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, Jerry on drums
and Brent on guitar. It was a blast, man.
Yeah, it was very funny, and I was really, really high on acid, and I didn't have my camera, so I've never seen a photo of that anywhere. But the funny thing is that I don't know if it's funny, but those shows, which was March 30th, 31st, and April 1st, the April Fool's Day that you were just saying, that's the show where I met this guy named BT. And BT was the guy in San Francisco who became my acid guru, and that I ended up getting busted with. They were watching him in San Francisco. But I met him at those shows, and he came up to me, I think it was the first night, and said, hey, man, do you want a dose? And I'm like, yeah. And he gives me 50 hits of acid. And I just give it to all my friends. And then at the end of the show that night, he says, hey, man, if you want, when I get back to San Francisco next week, I'd be happy to overnight you a couple thousand hits of LSD, and you can sell it to your friends in high school. And I thought that was the greatest thing I ever heard in my life. So I immediately gave my parents' home address, and he just started sending me thousands of hits of LSD, and I was just selling it to my friends from high school. And all of a sudden we were fucking drug dealers working for this guy's underground, LSD distribution network and
drug dealers in New Jersey.
Yes, in New Jersey. We psychedelicized all of northern New Jersey for the entire year until I got arrested.
Those weren't Brotherhood hits, were they?
They were not Brotherhood hits. No, these are BT made out of San Francisco. There was a lot of different quote unquote families making blotter. There was the dolphins and the tetragrammatons, and there was a lot of good blotter coming out of the Bay Area in 1980.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, get a load of this. And a vestige of the past here that I still have. I scanned it when I found it in my stuff. Of course, this would come along when you got like what's known as a book. This is So I actually still have this from.
I love it.
1981, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, let's get past all that. And let's talk a little bit about, I know in the early 80s, you moved to Olympia, Washington, and you went to Evergreen, right?
Yeah. Good hippie school.
Yo,
do you know what?
Steve, didn't John Dwork go there?
I don't know if Dwork went there. It's possible. Do you know what K Records was?
Yes.
Right, with Calvin and Calvin Johnson. So, there was a whole punk contingent there when I was there. God, what was the name of the band Calvin was in before K Records? What was his band? The Beat Happening? Was that what that was?
I'm trying to figure it out.
Calvin Johnson. Anyway, so, there was a whole punk scene going on at Evergreen in 1982, 3, and there was a whole hippie scene. And we really didn't mingle. We really didn't mix. There were two very, very different scenes. People knew each other. And if there was a live show of a band on campus, we all went.
Are we talking about the Cool Rays or the Beat Happening?
Beat Happening. Yeah. So that was what was happening in Olympia. And, K Records went on to be very important and influential. Joe in Seattle, Beat Happening, right?
Yeah.
So, essentially, that's where all that started in Evergreen. And, we were hippies, we were punks. We didn't really, there's a photographer named Michael Levine who was at Evergreen, I think around the same time that I was. And he went out to shoot all the alt rock and a lot of punk rock and Sonic Youth and all this stuff. But, we weren't friends at Evergreen because he was doing his thing. I was doing my thing.
I was going to ask you, did you have any, who were your peers photography wise? Were there any kids our age that were out there doing, wasn't Bob Minkin basically?
Bob and I met in a Grateful Dead parking lot in 1979. We've been friends for 45, 46 years now.
Because I remember him. I remember him in the mix back then, too.
Yeah, for sure. Joe in Seattle saying Kim Thale. I don't know if Kim went to Evergreen or not, Joe. So my roommate was a guy named Stuart Hallerman. And Stuart owns a recording studio in Seattle called Avast. And Stuart went to high school with Kim Thale and Hero, the original bass player in Soundgarden. And so that's how he ended up being, Soundgarden's. When Chris Cornell met him, Stuart had like a little tiny PA with a mixing board and two big speakers and probably some subwoofers or whatever, tweeters. And I remember, Chris Cornell was like, you own a sound system? You're hired. You're our sound guy. He was already friends with, Kim and Hero from high school in the Chicago suburbs. And so Kim and Hero were about the same age. So I don't ever remember seeing Kim at Evergreen, but it certainly is possible he could have been part of the punk rock scene that I just wasn't part of. It's only a few thousand people.
For those that don't know, Evergreen College is in Humboldt County. And
No. Olympia, Washington. Different one.
Excuse me. Olympia, Washington. Right. You got
it. The Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. Anyway, but I met Kim a few years later when they came out on the road. They opened for a band at the Stone. Is this a band or am I making this up? The Pontiac Brothers?
I'm not sure, but yeah. Could be.
They were the opening act for a band. I feel like that's who it was at the Stone, which is like a club in North Beach in San Francisco. I could be wrong. Sure. Anyway, that was, I think, the first time that I shot Soundgarden. That must have been 87, I believe. 87, 88, something like that.
So walk us through real quick. Get us into San Francisco. From what I understand, I mean, I know you studied photography and filmmaking, which led to an internship doing corporate photography, which brought you to the Bay Area.
No, I had a girlfriend at the time, a woman named Lizzie, and Lizzie and I sort of had a deal that when I got to my last year of Evergreen, I would do like internships and do school remotely in the Bay Area so she could start going back to school, because she dropped out of college in Ann Arbor, University of Michigan, to come live with me in Olympia and, you know, be a dirtbag hippie like all of us, and hang out and crochet and knit. And so we lived together in Olympia. So we had this deal that we would move to the Bay Area, and I got an internship down there with this company, which is funny. I haven't heard from the guy in a long time, and he just was DMing me on Facebook a few weeks ago, kind of remembering fondly. He was a very, you know, fairly conservative suit and tie wearing guy. Now he's got to be in his early 80s, I'm guessing. And anyway, so I got a job at this corporate place doing photography and video production, and, you know, kind of did my last year of college like that in 85, and then went back up to the Bay Area for a little bit, and then moved to the Bay Area full time in 86, finished school, went down there. And, you know, once you graduate from college and you're 20, let's see, in 86, I'm 25 years old. You know, you're trying to figure out your place in the script in the real world, and how are you going to pay your rent, right? Sure. You know, like, I mean, I'm not a trust fund baby. I'm not on the mommy and daddy bank. I had to like pay my rent. So like I had to get a job, and I got a job doing photography, whether or not it was, you know, shooting pictures of like employees at Shell Oil or whatever other stupid job it was. You know, it was a paid job, and, you know, I probably got paid like $300 a week. Pontiac Brothers was the guy from the Gun Club.
The Gun Club, who? Jeffrey Lee Pierce, the singer for the Gun Club, was in the Pontiac Brothers. One great thing about doing the show is you put it out there, you get
you get answers. Yeah. Whoever put that up there, do a little internet search and see if you can find a Pontiac Brothers show that was in San Francisco at the Stone. That was the name of the club, the Stone in San Francisco. And I don't want to get Ward, who was in. Okay, I got it. Yeah, go ahead. Right. Let me just real quick and see if I can do what you were doing and multitask. And real quick, I can actually tell you the exact date of the Soundgarden show. Give me a second here. I'm scrolling while we're talking. I'm multitasking.
You know, I tell the great Stone story about in 82, 83. I was over there. I was in San Francisco, and we went and saw Jerry Garcia at the Stone, and he was playing Sugar-E, and it was going on and on and on and on. And I sort of wandered out of the club and onto the sidewalk, and I noticed across the street from the Stone, there was a bunch of punks and skins hanging out. And I was like, wow, what's going on over there? And I went across the street and kind of paid $2 and went upstairs and sat in the balcony and watched this incredible band play. I wasn't sure who they were. Turned out the place was called the On Broadway, and the band was Social Distortion.
Oh, nice.
And it was like I just wandered out of boredom of the Jerry show and ended up in this hardcore show. And so that was.
Well, what's weird here is I'm looking at the photos, and they're from February 18th, 1989 of Soundgarden, and what's interesting is that in the background on the wall, it looks like it's a logo for Living Color, the band.
Could be.
So maybe that's who they were opening for, and I'm just remembering this wrong. Maybe they opened for Living Color. Maybe the Pontiac Brothers were also like an opening act at the same show. Anyway, that's, I think, what it was. 2/18/89. If anybody on the internet can figure out where Soundgarden played on that day, I believe it's the Stone in San Francisco. So February of 89, not 87. That's the first time I photographed Soundgarden. And then I photographed him in February. And it looks like Hero is actually on bass at this show. I didn't realize I shot them once with Hero on bass. And then the next time when they came back, Jason Everman was the bass player in December of 89, and I shot that for Spin Magazine.
This Jason Everman was in a band with my cousin as well. What was it?
Well, you know that he was in Nirvana.
100%, bro.
And he left Nirvana because he thought that Soundgarden was going to be the biggest band in the world. And then, did you ever read the article about him in the New York Times Sunday magazine?
Incredibly interesting guy. He was in the army.
He became a ranger.
He was in my cousin's band, Old Lady Drivers, and like the guy's a really interesting character. But let me ask you: is it fair to say that sort of like a watershed moment in your career is when you became the house photographer at the I-Beam?
Well, it was an important moment, because of what was happening, in music in 87, 88, 89. That's when I was doing that, so I did get to shoot, Soul Asylum and the Pixies and Jello Biafra and Faith No More and the Godfathers and the Wedding Present and the Dickies, the Butthole Surfer several times, Soundgarden, Jane's Addiction.
Wow.
The Sugar.
All live, right? This was
all live, all at the I-Beam, all live.
Yeah.
So there was really, it was an important moment because I was trying to learn how to become a live music photographer. I was trying to figure out, how to make it all work. And, so yeah, it was important, and it was inspirational, influential, important for growth as a photographer. And just kind of exploring, it was places like the I-Beam where I couldn't be next to some punk rocker at a Butthole Surfer show and be like, yeah, I'm going to go see the Dead next week, because nobody could understand that.
Right. Right. And I know about this time, you got the call and shot. Is it this stuff?
Yeah, U2. Yeah, exactly. So
tell us about that U2 concert in San Francisco and Jody Peckman got and that whole bit.
Yeah. So the woman, when I moved to Olympia, Washington, so in 82, after I was convicted of my crime, after I lost my court case, I got arrested in 81. I got convicted in the spring of 82. And on appeal, I moved out to the West Coast to Olympia because I wanted to get residency in the state of Washington. And I applied to college because if I lost my appeal, I wanted to say to the judge, in 45 years, 43 years, I'm going to be on the Punk Rock Chronicles. So you really shouldn't throw me in jail. But he said there is no such thing as the Punk Rock Chronicles. And I don't know who this fucking clown Drew Stone is.
And I don't know what the fuck the internet is either.
Right. So they didn't believe me. So they threw the book at me. And anyway, so I moved to Olympia, Washington while I was out on bail appealing it. And I drove across country with this woman named Robin. And she lived in Santa Cruz, and I gave her a ride to Santa Cruz in my 69 Chevy Nova. And then I drove up north to Olympia by myself. And Robin went to high school with Jody Peckman. And Jody was the new photo editor at Rolling Stone magazine 5 years later. And I started submitting my photographs to Jody, and Jody would say, hey, these are great. It's exactly what we use in the magazine. It was mostly the front section, random notes, like, sure, backstage snapshots, live concert photos. And she's like, this is great. This is exactly what we use, but I cannot use you because I've never used you before as a photographer. Right. It was like some weird Rolling Stone thing. It was like a catch-22. Right. And so that was like May, June, July, August. I'd send her something here and there. Hey, check this out. This is cool. This happened. This free concert, blah, blah. This backstage thing happened. And then we get to November of 87, and we start hearing a rumor that U2 is going to do a free concert in downtown San Francisco. And the reason why we heard this rumor is because they used the Grateful Dead sound system at the concert, and it was in the Grateful Dead pipeline. And so so all of a sudden they announced it on the radio, and I put my cameras together and was walking out the door at my house in Oakland, and the phone rang, and the woman said, hey, Jay, it's Jody Peckman at Rolling Stone magazine. I have your big break. I need you to go shoot the free U2 concert. I need you to go down to the Hyatt Regency and the Embarcaderos and go to room, whatever it is. Go meet a guy named Roger Clark, who's the publicist for Bill Graham. Get your pass. And I submitted my photos, and they published my photo in Rolling Stone in January of 88 issue. And after I did that assignment for Jody, I went on to do 300 assignments for her over the next 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the U2 thing was 11/11/87.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Hey, by the way, the show was 2/18/89 at the Stone. It was slamming Watusi's Living Color and Soundgarden.
Okay, so Pontiac Brothers is a different show. Great. So I was right about the Living Color thing because I saw it in the background.
Yeah.
Slamming Watusies.
Yeah.
Thank you, whoever came up with that info, but thank you. See, I got the date. I had the band. We knew who else. Funny that I didn't shoot Living Color that night. I shot them another time around that same era. So that was February of 89. And the first time I shot Living Color was June of 88. So I had already shot Living Color at the I-Beam.
So
that's the show that I lost my hearing at, by the way. Also, I was in front of Vernon Reed's amp for an hour and a half with no earplugs, 8 feet in front of it. Literally, my ears rang for 7 days.
how's your hearing these days?
What'd you say?
I saw some loud Dead shows back in the day too. Some really loud.
It's the drums that get you. If you're sitting next to the drums, you gotta like fucking put an earplug in.
Hey, let me take a quick sponsor break, and we'll come back and let's talk about your stint at BAM, and let's get into the punk book. Okay.
Great.
We'll see you in about 5. There you have it. Here we go. It's the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Our guest today's photographer, Jay Blakesberg. Lots more to talk about. Big show and tell session coming up. Let me get our promo going, and we'll be back in a few. Since 1992, Generation Records has been a mainstay of the New York metropolitan area music scene. Today, they offer a diverse selection of new and used rock, jazz, indie, hip-hop, punk, hardcore, metal, blues, soundtrack, and reggae LPs, as well as t-shirts, posters, and other merchandise. They buy used record collections and music memorabilia and will pay you top dollar for them. House calls made for large collections in the tri-state area. Call or email generationrecords@gmail.com and follow them on Facebook and Instagram.
Will that be cash or in debt?
Do you mean debit?
Yes. Sorry. Another eternally satisfied customer.
Yo, what's happening? I'm out here at one of our all-ages Sunday matinees on the Bowery. I hope that you are enjoying today's show. I just want to let you know that the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live needs your support. Please step up. There is a Patreon page that has a lot of unique program. Shows are announced there first. Lots of good stuff. There's a PayPal address right there on the screen if you want to make a contribution. There's also a super chat function. You could do that. But the bottom line is this show exists because of your support. We're going to be doing it for a long, long time. Thank you for all your support through the years. Back to the show.
Conditioned by indoctrination, conditioned by society. You're a victim of the digital age, a 21st century casualty. Open your eyes, you're losing control. Open your eyes, put down the phone. Conditioned by misinformation, it's just the media telling us lies. Decipher fiction from the truth, society's slow and tragic demise. Open your eyes, you're losing control. Open your eyes, put down the phone. Everyone's got their...
Clank your chains and count your change. It's the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. We're back. Hey, want to mention some upcoming shows. Like we said, 1 week from today, there will be no show on Sunday because we, ID, are playing a free all-ages Sunday matinee at the Bowery Electric with Conservative Military Image, American Eagle, Murderers Row, and Faded Line. But 1 week from today will be the Al Baril Tribute, Wednesday, April 16th. A couple days after that, we got Greg Smith coming on the show to talk about the London 77 Lost Archive book that we are putting out. Incredible project. We will have Greg on the show, not just to talk about the book, but to talk about the golden age of music video, all the stuff that we did back then together as well. Chris Golis from Bulldoze is on Wednesday, April 23rd. Dez and Bob Lee from Astral Jets, and of course, Des from Black Flag and Misfits. That's Wednesday, April 30th. New music show, Wednesday, May 7th, with Greg Reason from Death Before Dishonor and Chris from Crazy and the Brains. And then Freddie Mabo will be on Sunday, May 11th, celebrating the release of True to the Game, the Roadrunner years. Ooh, Chris Beatty, ex-Hatebreed, Sunday, May 18th. Michael Falzerano of New Riders of the Purple Sage, the Englishtown Project, formerly Hot Tuna, and the Airplane Family is Wednesday, May 28th. And our friend Don Capria will be on with actor Louis Lombardo from The Sopranos, 24 Suicide Kings, to talk about the film that they just put out called Director's Cut. That said, I want to thank everybody for supporting the show. Please do so. Of course, there's that Patreon page. Get with it. Get up, get down. Get with it. Also, follow the show on Instagram at Stone Films NYC. I want to shout out new patrons, Bazooka Joe and Daniel Mendez. Thank you very much. Please join us on Patreon. There's also a super chat function. If you want to put a couple bucks through that way, ask a question for our guest. It comes through in color. Of course, I can't miss it. Still looking for another sponsor. There's room on the boat for one more. So if you have something you'd like to push here on the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live, please reach out. So that said, let's clear the Dez episode is going to be great. Yep. What's up, Rich Zoller? So there you go. That said, let's clear the deck. What the heck? And let's bring our guest back on, photographer. Hey, Ricky, I see you. I'll bring you on in a minute, Ricky, when we get to the punk book. So glad you could join us. Hey, Jay.
Hello.
Hey, man. So I see Ricky's kind of backstage there. Let's make our way to the punk book. You also end up at BAM. Tell us, for those on the East Coast, that you mentioned the Aquarian Weekly, and it's sort of like in a parallel universe, right? Tell us about what BAM is.
BAM was a twice a month music magazine. BAM stood for Bay Area Music, but eventually it migrated to LA as well. They did, the LA version had different advertising in it that was local, and usually had a different cover story. But then, some of the editorial was the same. Some of it crossed over, depending on who the band was.
Right.
Like I did a Chili Peppers cover. I walked over to BAM magazine, walked in the offices one day and said, "Hey, I want to shoot covers for you." I'd only shot a couple of covers in my life, and they sort of laughed at me a little bit, and then. Actually, at that point, I think the only covers I had were live concert photos that were on the covers of magazines. And they called me up a few weeks later and said, "Hey, we need somebody to shoot Camper Van Beethoven down in Santa Cruz for a cover." And that was in October of =89, I believe. And I went down and shot Camper Van, and then I went on to shoot 59 covers for the magazine over the next few years. After a year or two, they always said, whoever wrote the cover story would say, story by Steve Stolder, but it never had a photo credit on the cover. And then they started adding my name, story by Steve, like we did Jane's Addiction together for Lollapalooza in '91, story by Steve Stolder, photographs by Jay Blakesberg. And then one time they did a story on Ice-T when he was, what was his band called? Ice-T.
Body Count.
Body Count. And so the body count on the cover, the font was really big, but the Ice-T font was pretty small. And then my name was on there, and my name was bigger than Ice-T's name or something like that. And so they got all bent out of shape, and they never put my name back on the cover after that. They were mad. So
is some of this stuff that we're going to bring your daughter on in a sec, but was stuff like this that kind of turns up in the punk book? Is this stuff that was like on assignment for BAM?
No, so that particular shot, I can't remember if that's in the punk book. I'm scrolling through it real quick. That shot of Susie Sue was actually so in the late 80s, early 90s, how every concert you go to today has a silk screen poster that's limited edition signed by a badass artist, that didn't exist. So in the late 80s, there was a poster shop here in San Francisco called Art Rock. And they definitely specialized in all of the psychedelic, posters of the 60s and whatnot, and those people. But they were also like the first big proponent of people like Kozik and
Right.
Frank Kozik and
Sure.
Coop and people like that. And so
Yeah.
back then they would like pick a concert that happened 2 years earlier, 3 years earlier, and commission a poster artist. Gary Grimshaw was a big Detroit poster artist in the 60s and did some of the psychedelic stuff. But, you know, the guy who owned Art Rock was from Detroit. So he would hire poster artists and they would do a show like, you know, Susie and the Banshees at so-and-so, 1977, 1982, like a show that already happened. Now there's posters being made in real time all the time.
Yeah.
But back then it wasn't happening. And so they had some deal to do a poster with Susie Sue. And they came in and they did a portrait of her, which was, you know, this particular portrait. And you know, there's a very famous photograph of Gloria Swanson, famous silent film actress from the 20s, I believe, taken by a guy named Edward Steichen, very famous photographer, where he had that piece of lace in front of her face. Everybody has seen it somewhere.
Sure.
And that was my inspiration for doing this. I hung this piece of lace in front of Susie's face and sort of shot her through it. And yeah, so that was what this was shot for, was for them to make a poster, which for some reason never happened. Like the deal fell through, but she came to my studio and I did the portrait, and I still have a beautiful portrait to this day of her, which is this one.
Absolutely. I'm looking up one of my old Kozik I have old Beastie Boys. What's happening? Hold on.
Yeah, so you know Frank Kozik. You know, he died a year or two ago, 3 years ago. I mean, obviously, you know, highly influential in the poster world, and then became a toy designer, toy manufacturer,
right,
you know, in his later years. But there was a guy that worked at Art Rock that was sort of Kozik's manager, and you know, he would come in and you know, give me posters all the time. So I asked if I could do a portrait of Kozik. So I have some nice portraits that I did of Kozik.
Is this one of? I think this is what you're talking about, because I had this for many years. I actually had it signed. Is this like the kind of thing we're talking about?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And I might even have this one also. I can't
Yeah.
remember. You know, go look up the one that's Soundgarden.
Yeah.
The girl with her arms up, like that's one that I have.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a bunch. I've got probably 20 or 30 Kozik posters.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah, I really, you know, got some framed hanging on the wall, Dinosaur Jr. But yeah, that was what was going on here in the late 80s, early 90s in San Francisco. And that's how that Susie Sue shot came about.
And so let's get to, let me sort out, let me introduce your daughter, Ricky Blakesberg, coming at us from, are you in Norway? Where are you?
I'm in Prague.
You're in Prague.
Yeah, Czech
Nice.
Republic.
Nice city, man. I've had some good. Stay away from the what was it, the anisette? What is that? Oh God, that stuff.
The absinthe?
The absinthe. Oh man. Whoa.
I know. I've been passing some absinthe bars, but I haven't tasted any yet.
I'm
Sticking
still
to beer.
hungover 30 years later from drinking that stuff, man. Yeah.
Strong.
Yeah. That it's a beautiful city. Really.
Yeah,
beautiful.
it's really beautiful. The architecture is amazing. I've been super blown away by everything. Taking lots of pictures,
I have
following
fond
in my dad's
memories.
footsteps.
Hi, Ricky. Hi, Ricky.
Hi, Jay.
So let me ask you. You kind of curate. Is it fair to say that you kind of curate your dad's archive these days?
Yeah, definitely. I like to say that I'm his creative director. I take all of his work and I use my vision to put it out there. Specifically for Jay's stuff, all his film photography is sort of what's really in my hands. I don't really touch the digital stuff. We leave that to him.
Right.
So I stopped shooting film in 2008, and during the pandemic, Ricky came to me with an idea because she was doing marketing for bands and festivals, and so she lost all of her clients and was home living with us in San Francisco. She moved back from Brooklyn. We came back on Friday, the 13th of March. And I think Ricky brought enough clothes for a week, thinking she'd be at our house for a week, like everybody in the world thought this would be over in a week. Yeah, and after about 4 weeks, and actually, I'm pretty sure it was like this week, Ricky, like the first week in April.
Crazy, yeah. I'll have to go
2020. So exactly 5 years ago this week, she said, I have an idea. How about if I start a new Instagram page for you called Retro Blakesberg, and it'll be only photographs that you shot on film. And I thought that was a great idea. So she kind of ran with that. And then Ricky, tell us what you've done with Retro Blakesberg since then.
Yeah, Retro Blakesberg has really evolved. We've had 3 museum shows, one in New Jersey, one in San Francisco, and one that's currently up right now at the Grammy Museum in LA. And it's been really beautiful to take Jay's photos and sort of curate them and produce them in a way that isn't just surrounded around the Grateful Dead. I think a lot of people know my dad's work as being connected to the Grateful Dead. And so my whole vision with Retro Blakesberg is bringing him into, you know, this nostalgic, we live in a nostalgic era. And I sort of started Retro Blakesberg to allow people from my generation to be able to enjoy these photos and relate and connect to the fashion and music of, you know, the 80s and the 90s. And that's sort of how we got to the punk scene. You know, I think a lot of people don't know that my dad was shooting punk. A lot of people don't realize that. And the zine was a cool way to showcase, you know, all the stuff that he was doing in the 80s and 90s while he was still following the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And the zines are kind of a cool collection. We have a Deadhead zine and this punk zine, and they're cool because, you know, they're small, they're easy to pick up, they're very approachable, you know, like you kind of just go through it and it feels like you're going through a magazine. And you know, we have backstage passes, different type of ephemera, and the punk scene just feels like you're immersed into portraiture, but also this live scene that my dad was really a part of in San Francisco in the late 80s and 90s. And we're seeing these bands at their start at the beginning.
Yeah. And when I saw this, because of following on Instagram, when I saw this, I was like, all right, that's my hook to get him on the show. That's how I'm gonna get. That's the hook. That's my hookup. That's how I'm gonna get him on. We're gonna talk about the punk stuff, and I'm gonna get a chance to sort of tie it in with the Grateful Dead stuff.
And also, Drew, Ricky wanted to make a thing that was accessible both economically, right? So they're under $30 essentially, and you know, they're fun, they're easy, they're just great little fun reads. Joey from Lagwagon wrote a great introduction for us. I photographed him a bunch, but essentially it's really punk rock 3.0. Is that where we're at? Is this what that is?
Yeah.
Is that what Joey says in here? Punk rock 3.0. You know, NoFX, Lagwagon, Blink 182, Green Day, but there's also
Bad Religion.
Bad Religion, the Meat Puppets, Henry Rollins, Patti
Pop, the Ramones, yeah.
Offspring, Fugazi, the band X, which is what's on the cover and the back cover that you just had up there. You know, we wrapped the front and back cover all together as one, and it's this stage diver guy, essentially just like, you know, coming from backstage and jumping off this very high stage and landing on people and probably hurting them.
Do you know what show that was?
Yeah, this was at the Moore Theater up in Seattle. I was actually visiting my college friends, and X was the headliner, and the opening act was a little band called the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Maybe you've heard about the Chili Peppers. They were the openers, and my friend Mark Cohen, rest in peace, Mark. He worked at Elektra Records and did radio promotion for Elektra, and X was his band, and they were working X at college radio. And he got me on the guest list. A couple of people just said that I need this. You can go to my website, rockoutbooks.com. Rockoutbooks.com.
Is that accessible from www.blakesberg.com?
Yes, I think you can get it from blakesberg.com. You just click
I saw
on
it there.
And it'll take you there. But rockoutbooks.com, either way. And I don't know, what are these, $27 including the shipping? They're really, $20 because the shipping's about $7. So they're, $20 books basically. And, DIY, right? They're printed on nice paper and they're fun. They look good. And
they're a good little coffee table book. They're small, but they're fun to pick up if you're just hanging out at a friend's house.
Yeah. And Ricky's working on a couple of new ones. We're definitely doing one on, so Ricky and I also own a business called Retro Photo Archive. You can follow that on Instagram, Retro Photo Archive, one word. And we manage a whole bunch of archival photography collections from elderly and or deceased photographers.
Can I ask you something about that?
Yeah.
What's with the Ron Rackow archive?
Well, we managed Ron's archive. Ron worked for the
That
Grateful Dead in the late
that thing
60s.
is unbelievable.
Yeah, that's
Isn't
Ricky.
it badass?
That's
Yeah.
Ricky. That's
Like,
Ricky's doing.
On a daily, you're involved with that, Ricky?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
I curate the whole retro photo archive page. That's all
that
stuff that I
Ron
work on.
Rackow archive blows my mind like on a daily basis. I mean, that is the most incredible stuff. I mean, I can't, like, where has that stuff been all these years?
It was in that
Been
storage
sitting in
locker in boxes for 50 years. So anyway,
Yeah.
so Ricky, the next zine that we're just about done with it. We won't print it for a couple more months. It'll come out the end of the year. We also manage the archive of the Grateful Dead photographs from Egypt that Adrian Boot took. And so Ricky just finished producing an Egypt zine, and then we're in a debate over what the other zine should be because we want to do them two at a time. We're talking about our choices are what? Folk rock, Neil Young,
psychedelic.
and we're also talking about doing a psychedelic one of psychedelic icons. So anybody want to vote out there? Neil Young, folk rock, which would be like Neil Young, James Taylor, Jackson Brown, Joni Mitchell.
Joan Baez.
The archive site is retrophotoarchive.com or retrophotoarchive on Instagram. So we got some ideas.
Is it all the Egypt stuff like them with the pyramids and on the camel and on the camels and that to me one of the all-time greatest shots of Garcia with the wind in his hair with the pyramid in the
yeah,
iconic,
we manage that photograph.
Oh.
You know, yeah.
I'm posting all of these photographs.
Neil Young, you know.
Oh,
That's interestingly enough.
Jay, you might be winning.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I got a lot of Neil Young that people haven't seen. A lot of Neil Young out there. So
Yeah.
Anyway, so we'll have two new zines. The current ones that we have are the punk one, and then Deadheads.
Yeah.
Ricky, do we have a bundle deal on the site for buying both of those together? I think we do, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
So we have a discounted bundle deal on that, and we have other books on there. There's the Retro Blakesberg coffee table book that Ricky curated, see that Courtney's Fellowship of Oddballs is already following us on IG and didn't even know it because the algorithm sending Courtney to some bubble gum stripper or something like that, right?
Right.
Anyway, so Ricky did the whole punk zine. She curated it, kind of coordinated the whole thing. And so that stuff is all in her domain under Retro.
What was the process, Ricky, like digging through your dad's archives and stuff? Like what walk us through the process a little bit.
Yeah. It's so much fun. So I live in New York City. I'm based out of Brooklyn, and I have a hard drive full of my dad's film archive. And initially he sent me a big group of what he thought would work. And I took one look and I'm pretty hard on him. I'm like, dude, this can't be it. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And so I just started going through the archive and I was finding all this stuff. I was like, holy shit, Dad, I've never seen this photo of the Butthole Surfers, or oh my God, these are some deep cuts of you hanging out with Fat Mike. This is the stuff that people want to see, this behind the scenes feeling. And so going through his archive, this backstage Chili Pepper shot, when I started Retro Blakesberg and I found this photo, I was like, this is insane. This is, is this 86, Jay?
86 or 7. I think it's 87.
Yeah. And
original drummer and original guitar player Hillel Slovic and Jack Iron drums. That was the show where they opened for X, which is the cover of that same show. That's where that was from. And I never heard Chili Peppers. I took 3 shots of them. There's No Effects, Fat Mike, and that's at Warped Tour.
Warped Tour.
Thank you. Warped Tour. That's what I was trying to think of. I was like, what? Warped Tour. My brain is warped. Ricky knew it, and she's smoking more weed than anybody today, and she knew it.
Yeah. I told my dad, I was like, I got a little stoned before this.
A little is okay.
He's like, you want to come on this podcast? I was like, shit. All right. Here we go.
No, you're amongst friends here. So that must, I've been there going through archives, and it's such an exciting journey of discovery when you look into the corners, like, oh, because there's the obvious stuff, and then there's the cool shit at the end of the roll, that
Totally. And my best friend from college is who designs the book with me, so it's really fun because me and her have this back and forth, and we're really like symbiotic in the way that we like to design and do things. So it's so fun working with her because she adds in all these elements that, as a curator, I'm thinking about how to order the photos or how I want to put these together and what works and what doesn't. But then to have her design elements in it is really exciting and amazing.
Yeah. Good stuff. There's Green Day, which I'm assuming, is this outside their rehearsal room, Jay?
That's outside of
a
nightclub called Slims in San Francisco.
Sure. Okay.
And they were, this is, I don't know, what year was this? 89, 90? I can't even remember.
I think it's 89.
No, it's 93. I think it's 93.
Yeah.
I could tell you exactly. But anyway, it's early in their career. They're playing a nightclub for, 400 people kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
Good. And it's cool, my dad, the way my dad has shot over the years is so interesting. Because, like, with that one he shot, that was on your Hasselblad?
That shot, yeah, I did shoot with the Hasselblad at that.
Is this a Hasselblad shot?
No,
that's backstage 35 millimeter with a fisheye lens.
Right. Okay.
But also, you used a special light for the blue, right?
No, film.
Special film.
Yeah. So the Green Day shots from '94, July 5th, 1994. This was no doubt backstage at Shoreline Amphitheater.
Very pretty, beautiful shot.
Yeah. The local radio stations everywhere used to do those big radio promo concerts. And I think they called this what they call the Live 105. They called it the Listener Appreciation Concert. I don't know what the fuck that was all about. And they'd have all these great bands. And I was the station photographer, and I'd grab the bands before or after they went on stage, say, hey, can we do a quick portrait? And I just, loaded up a roll of blue film and shot a whole roll of film of them sitting there in like 30 seconds with the motor drive, boom, 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 and boom, done, walk away.
Yeah, I got to say, Courtney, Gwen Stefani just takes over this
she's
photo.
An icon.
I mean, just right. Everyone, she's breathtaking. What a breathtaking photo.
Thank you.
Yeah, really, really fantastic. Let me see what else I put. You mentioned, and I think here's. I know a bunch of this stuff is Lollapalooza.
That's from Lollapalooza for sure. L7. This was really the peak of quote unquote Seattle grunge, and how they were putting models on the cover of Vogue magazine wearing flannel shirts, right? Because they were, grunge was a thing. And so this was their commentary on essentially saying, fuck you, we're not for rent, we're not for sale.
Yeah.
But this is what's happening in the world. And, so that's Danita on the left and Jennifer Finch in the middle there. Yep. And, that's just, they were just commenting on what was, like any scene. I mean, you go back to the 1960s,
sure.
The Summer of Love. By the time you got to 1967 with the Summer of Love, it was a mainstream news item. And, the scene had become not as organic and become mainstream as opposed to alternative and punk. So it was the same thing in the early days of the grunge movement out of Seattle. It was a very alternative scene. Bands were playing clubs. It was just growing, and then, it exploded, and, the rest is history.
What's the great story about, the hippie tour and on the hate, the guy, the hippie chasing with the mirror, like, chasing the bus with the mirror. I mean,
that's a documentary film called The Hippie Temptation.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I think it's on YouTube. It's worth watching.
And here's our good friend and supporter who's been on the show, and we love this guy. Fifth Bone,
Angelo.
It's Angelo, yeah. And I'm assuming like this is that particular Lollapalooza tour.
Yeah, this is Lollapalooza in 90 something. And you want to know, it's really funny. The very, very bottom left corner, the guy that's there with his hand up like that. You can just see his kind of his eyes and his nose. He became the Smash Mouth tour manager for many years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
funny. Well, that's
Yeah,
one of the
I
great
met him.
things.
I met him years later. Obviously, when I started working with Smash Mouth, and he's like, there's a picture you have of Angelo from Fishbone and in Rolling Stone. That's me in the bottom left corner. It was just one of those funny things.
Wow, that's fantastic.
I'm just gonna chime in and say I'm gonna head out. I'm gonna
Okay.
go to bed since I'm
Well,
in Prague. But
Good night,
thank
Ricky.
you guys so much for having
thank you.
me.
Thank you for taking the time and stopping
Yeah,
by.
of course.
Bye, Rick.
Right.
Love
Thanks,
you.
guys.
We'll see you
Bye.
soon.
Love you.
Good night.
Have
Love
fun.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Fantastic. Let me see a couple others. Oh, this one's fantastic. This looks like a big. Yeah, we're doing a little show and tell now. Hope you don't mind.
No.
What's happening here?
Beastie Boys Tibet Freedom Concert.
That's what I thought.
I
Yeah.
believe this one is 98, which puts this in DC, I think, in 98.
Mhm.
But yeah, just, it's funny. It's the 30th anniversary of the Tibet Freedom Concerts next year. I just got an email from the women who started it with Adam Yauch, a woman named Erin Potts. And they're kind of gearing up with a podcast and some other things to sort of celebrate the 30th anniversary of this monumental, shows that happened 3 years in a row, 96, 97, 98. And they might have done something in 99, but I think I just shot the first three.
Yeah. His name came up before, of course, a big favorite on the show here.
Sure, Iggy. And of course, you can find Iggy in the like here. This is a great portrait here that I'll show from the book. So that's Bob Mould, and then the other one I like to call that Rotten Jello Mold because it's Johnny
Right.
Rotten, Bob Jello Biafra, and Bob Mould. So
That's a great
Rotten
shot.
Jello Mold.
Wow.
And then this is taken at the Phoenix Hotel for a magazine called Option that used to exist once upon a time. Here's the meat puppets at the I-Beam. What else do we have in here? No use for a name. There's Fat Mike with a video camera on top of his helmet. That was like a Fat Records anniversary show at Great American Music Hall. Mike Watt, of course, from Minutemen Fire Hose fame. Shot Mike a whole bunch of times. This is Rancid. This shot here, right here on the top, these stage moshers, I believe that's actually at the Godfathers at the I-Beam.
Oh, wow.
With these people, crunching themselves really big. There's Brody and L7, right? The Distillers, Brody from the Distillers and L7. And in the back of the book, we've got, all the captions on everybody that, where they were taken, who it is, where, a little bit of info. Lollapalooza, Natoma Street Studio, Food Not Bombs, Fugazi, Benefit, Great American Music Hall, Avalon Ballroom, No Effects.
That reminds me because we just had a previous photographer on the show, and he was talking about having lost some of his stuff or some of his stuff was damaged. Have you managed to kind of hold on to everything from day one?
Most everything. There's a few little holes. There's some things that got lost also.
Sure.
Actually, I did a whole photo shoot for BAM magazine with Jello Biafra on the cover. This is a punk rock thing. You probably know this story, but do you know what the Gilman Street project was? Right.
Well, I know Gilman Street. We've played there, and I've been there.
Right.
I know Gilman Street.
Right. So Gilman Street, 924 Gilman, of course. So some punk band was playing there, and Jello Biafra went over to see the band, whoever it was, and a bunch of punks beat him up and said, "You're not punk enough."
Oh.
Right. And so when I shot him for the cover of BAM, he came there wearing his crutches. I feel like that shot's in this book in the zine. He came there wearing a shirt that said, "Everybody knows I'm a lesbian," and had his crutches and his leg brace. They really, really beat him up really bad, because he wasn't punk enough. What the fuck? He's Jello Biafra. He's in the fucking Dead Kennedys. How much more punk can you be? And anyway, so after the cover shoot was over, the editor brought the photos back to San Francisco to give to me, and somehow they got lost in his apartment or something. So that was like all the color slides, all the color. I still have a few of the black and white photos because those were from negatives. But the color slides that I gave them for the cover shot, those were gone forever. I think there's a couple of outtakes that I had that you know, so, you know, there was a magazine that lost some Nirvana slides of mine once that, you know, when they resurrected Cream magazine and then it folded, they lost some of mine. You know, I had Entertainment Weekly lose some of my photos of Deadheads in Golden Gate Park after Jerry Garcia died. So there's been you know, it's sad when you lose stuff because you don't know really what's in there. But
well, and what's sad, like you said, is just, you know, the intrinsic historical value of this stuff.
Yeah,
you know, I mean,
and nowadays we don't send it out anymore. You know, we don't have to send prints or slides you know, we just have we have it scanned and you know, we send out digital files. Meat puppets. Yeah. I mean, look at Kurt and Chris. You know, Jesus Christ, and Derek. I mean, they're babies here.
Yeah, they're young, man.
Yeah, love the Meat Puppets.
Yeah, pretty cool. Good one, like that. Let me take a very quick sponsor break, and we'll come back and we'll take some questions from around the world.
Great.
All
Let's
right?
do it.
What's up? Jay Blakesberg, photographer. This is the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. We are sponsored by blah, 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 and Mad Vintage. Mad Vintage buys, sells, and collects band shirts, primarily hardcore. The DIY operation was started and is operated by a hardcore kid who just loves collecting and eventually got into vintage clothing, specifically the realm of vintage band shirts. They are always looking to buy out collections to either keep, sell, or trade new shirts added daily at www.madvintage.com and post it on Instagram. Dig deep into that closet of crap and reach out to them. Help me help you, Mad Vintage. Last but not least, come on now. The Texas Silver Rush is a jewelry design firm and boutique store located in the birthplace of the Texas country music scene in Fredericksburg, Texas. They specialize in work with musicians in all music genres to design and create unique one-off pieces, as well as to style them for stage, album covers, promo photos, and social media exposure. Their client list includes Rock and Roll Hall of Famers Greg Riley, Ringo Starr, and of course, Agnostic Front. Information online sales are being taken at their Facebook and Instagram page, and of course, www.thetexassilverrush.com. If you have any questions for our guest, Jay Blakesberg, please post them now. Go deep, get weird. Especially you photographers out there. Rich Zoller and the rest of you, you know, some questions. Go deep, get weird. What do you got? Just want to mention once again, ID here in New York, Friday at Pugs in Staten Island, Sunday, the Big Banger at the Bowery Electric. Rebelmatic has a record release and performance at Generation Records on Saturday, May 3rd. Yo, check that out. Yo, Rampage Fest 7, May 4th. Free all ages Sunday matinee on the Bowery at our home, the Bowery Electric. Come on down. Sworn Enemy is headlining. Yo, we're doing the New York City Cinematic and Music Tour. We do it every once in a while. It's free to all patrons. Listen, if you're not a patron, just get with it already. Come on, support the show. Don't just be a taker. Give a little, will you? So join Patreon. Come out, do the tour with us for free. The tour is ending that day at Generation Records, where we are doing the book event for the London 77 Lost Archive book. So it's going to be a big day. Lots going on. Of course, the Black and Blue Bowl. The Black and Blue Bowl is Sunday, May 24th. Same day, earlier in the day, Rebelmatic, we're doing our show in Tompkins Square Park. I will not be there. ID is playing Vegas. Larry Kelly will be running the show. We are playing Vegas along Sold Out, 7 Seconds, Negative Approach, Effigies, and Stalag 13. And if you're out in Vegas, come do my guided tour at the Punk Rock Museum. So that said, that's what's up. Support. Don't make me come looking for you. Let's bring our guest back on. Jay Blakesberg. Hey, man.
Hey there. I hope I didn't talk over you. I thought you were talking to me.
No.
Okay.
I don't let anything bother me at this point.
Right.
So let's bounce the ball back and forth. Good one. Francis Sawyer asks, he shot in the Bay Area. Ever had any interactions with Bill Graham?
Of course. Several, many. Yeah. I mean, Bill was, ubiquitous here in the Bay Area. A lot of people didn't like Bill. Bill invented the modern day concert industry. Bill brought people together for public assemblage that resulted in great experiences and a lot of fun. Bill was, he was a hardcore motherfucker who changed the world.
Yeah, right on. Pat Baldwin asks, have any friendships developed from shooting any of your photo subjects?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. I mean, I first shot The Flaming Lips in 1989, and Wayne Coyne wrote the forward for Retro Blakesberg, 3 years ago when we made it. The Cream magazine ethos was rock stars are not your friend. Right. If you go back and watch the movie Almost Famous, right? Because all the people that worked on Almost Famous were all ex-Cream magazine people, the consultants and Cameron Crowe and all those people. But you know what? Nowadays, now we're friends with everybody, and it's okay to be friends with everybody. We're not crossing the line. We're not blurring the lines to doing false reporting because we're friends with them. And so for a long time, I subscribed to the rock stars are not my friend attitude, because that's what my friend Jan, who was an editor at Cream magazine back in the day, always told me. Rock stars are not. I did a lot of stories with her, and that's just not the case. And that's not how I want to live my life. I want to be friends with everybody.
Was this guy considered a friend?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Phil was great. I got to spend a lot of time with Phil over the last 25 years, 30 years, and had a lot of very intimate access to him and the music he was making and documenting it. So yeah, absolutely.
He was a giant, man. I mean, here's another shot of yours that I like. He was a giant. Here's another great shot. I like this one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have so much stuff of Phil that's just backstage and off stage and, candid moments and portraits. And there's a lot of stuff out there from the Phil Zone, as Hideous Strength says, the Phil Zone. Yeah. It looks like you got deadheads that are listening and watching your show, not just a bunch of punk rockers.
No, my reach is universal.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Worldwide.
Yeah, it is. Really. I like our friend drummer Dom from Concrete Burial. What is the single most dangerous situation you found yourself in while photographing? Well,
I mean, dangerous. At a particular show, photographing is stage diver landing on me and breaking my neck. That could be dangerous. I mean, I had a stage diver land on me and break my flash off my camera once. Right. But there's, you always wonder, is the barricade gonna crack and you're gonna get crushed against the stage and die? I've been crushed against some stages by fans. I think the one that I got the worst of was Duran Duran at the Fillmore in San Francisco. All the teenagers, literally, I was standing on a milk crate to get up a little bit higher. And I was bruised on my pelvis on both sides from being pushed against the stage, photographing it all night long by rowdy teenagers. So, you got to stay aware anywhere you are, everywhere you are. You got to watch out for flying objects, people, instruments,
sure.
Microphones. You got to be aware of your situation in any situation you go in.
Yeah.
Not a war photographer.
Yeah. Rick Bruss says, I always love Bottom of the Hill. What's your favorite San Francisco venue?
Bottom of the Hill was a good one, but it was a little bit, they didn't have a good lighting there. It was hard to shoot there with available light. My favorite SF venues are all of them because they're all home base for me. The Fillmore, the Warfield, the Regency, the Greek, the Bill Graham Civic. They all have their unique things.
Sure.
One of the best amphitheaters to shoot in the country is Shoreline Amphitheater here in the Bay Area because the stage is so low. I like to be able to see people's feet. When you're shooting up, you're getting them waist up. I like to be able to see people's feet, body language. And so Shoreline's got like a 3-foot stage. Yeah. And so that was always a great, fun venue. I don't shoot there that much anymore because I don't really shoot big shows anymore like that. But Shoreline Amphitheater.
Cool. Just a Duran Duran footnote here. I'm talking to some of the Duran people now about getting one of the guys on the show. So that, that should be interesting. Personal question. Is this your first paid dead gig?
No. That's Garcia and Hunter, shot for the Golden Road magazine. No, I've been being paid for my Grateful Dead photos in magazines for a long time before that. I don't know what the first paid gig was, the shots in the Aquarium when I was 17 that were two Grateful Dead photos. I didn't get assigned by the Aquarium. The writer connected me with them and asked me if I was going to be shooting them, and I was, and I submitted them and they used them.
Yeah. I just want to grab one of these kind of great, I guess this is just one of the, I'm going to go with it. I'm going to go with this one. Could you give us any perspective on this man?
Jerry, lead guitarist of the Grateful Dead. And Jerry did not want to be a rock star. Jerry did not want to be an idol. Jerry did not want to be a deity. Jerry just wanted to be a guitar player. And he was very funny and very self-deprecating and sarcastic. And just, my interactions with him were minimal. I did do a handful of portraits of him. And, he was just always very funny and laughed a lot and, made fun of things. That's perhaps my most iconic photo of Garcia.
Sure.
Shot on January 31st, 1991 up at the Grateful Dead office. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. As we're kind of heading down, could you
heading down the highway of wrapping things up?
Yeah. Could you, I have to ask, who was this man? Could you give us some perspective on this fellow?
So Bill Walton, of course, legendary Deadhead basketball player, sportscaster. Bill was just truly one of those magical human beings who loved life. Life was taken away from him too young, too soon, just, in the last year or so. And Bill was larger than life in so many ways. There's actually a little documentary coming out on him that'll be on YouTube. That they did a little interview with me. But yeah, Bill was just a really important human being to the planet, but also just a major Deadhead.
Going back and real approachable. I would see him and just real approachable, kind soul. Kind soul,
Yeah.
No, that's not Weir's wife.
No, that's Bill's wife, Lori.
Yeah, Bill's wife. Exactly.
Yeah.
Questions, please. Anybody got anything else? Hey, just as a footnote, I love this shot, and I just want to say, I've seen this guy carry that band in the 80s a couple of times. This guy doesn't get. Sometimes this guy kind of gets in the shadows due to the kind of Garcia and Les.
Oh yeah, but Bobby's a rock star, and he's a powerful singer and guitar player and just as important to every element of that band that drove us through all these decades.
Yeah. Like I said, saw him. I was there. You can't tell me different, anybody out there. I saw him carry that band a couple of times.
I love how much of a Deadhead you are, Drew Stone.
Yeah.
Look, Bobby Spaghetti Lee says Bobby fans are people too. This is true.
I'm going to dig up this other that someone just sent me some, but just as you answer this question, with all the LSD talk, did you ever meet Ken Kesey?
Oh yeah, I photographed Kesey. For sure. Yeah. He was a prankster. He was a trip, but yeah, I interacted with Kesey a handful of times.
Have you seen your hardcore trading card?
No, I don't even know what that is.
That would be this. Boom. Yeah.
Who made that? You?
No, that's Joshua Hurst, who has a whole incredible series of he has a passion for him, and he makes them. That's the front, and I got to show you the back is awesome.
I look very punk rock there, slamming my camera down. Urgh.
Arr. Let me show you. The back is awesome. Hold on. Get the back going here. Boom, boom, boom. Here we go on the back. Chock full of information, the back.
Wow, I got to get me one of these. Oh,
Yeah.
photo by Paul, right? Yeah.
Josh, I know you're watching. Reach out to Jay or Ricky. But personal trivia. To date, Jay has published 16 coffee table books of his work, with 14 of them being self-published through his own Rock Out Books. And along with his daughter, Ricky, he curates the Retro Photo Archive, which represents the work of many photographers for licensing on multiple platforms.
Cool. Love it.
Good stuff, man. See, just a couple more. Is this? I love this guitar. That's what caught my eye. Is this My Morning Jacket? Is that right?
Yep, My Morning Jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah, great band. If you've never seen them, I highly recommend it. Yeah, that's at the Fillmore in San Francisco.
Right. Did you ever meet Bear?
Yeah, I did a portrait of him.
Wow.
And Bear would run away. So for those of you guys who don't know who Bear is, that's Owsley Stanley III. Yeah. And Owsley made 6 million hits of LSD in the 1960s. Woo! And when it was still legal, and ended up going to prison a few years later. And when he saw you backstage at a Dead show with a camera, he pretty much ran away from you. There was really very few photos of Bear for most of his life when he was out in public. And I was up at the Grateful Dead warehouse getting ready to do a portrait of Phil and the band that he was rehearsing with to go out on the road with. And Bear walked by, and he was visiting from Australia. And he said, "What's this?" And I said, "I'm going to do a portrait of Phil when he's done rehearsing." And he said, "Do you want to do a portrait of me?" And I said, "Yeah." Sat down, and I got 6 shots in black and white, 6 in color. Wow. And he got up and walked away. And I'm pretty sure might be the only person to ever do a formal portrait of Bear. Studio lighting, the whole thing.
American legend, American hero, great American hero, Owsley Stanley. This is. Let me see. Oh, I love this one too. I think was this 1988? You want to fill us in on this one?
Led Zepp at Madison Square Garden. There was a concert that was the 40th anniversary of Atlantic Records. And I mailed a postcard into the local radio station in San Francisco, and I won. My postcard was pulled out of a hat, and they flew me to New York to go to the concert. And I took some photos, had a fake laminate pass, snuck up front, was right on the rail, got a couple of good shots of the old mighty Led Zepp. And besides the O2 shows a decade or so ago, I think this is the only other Led Zeppelin official concert post breakup in 1980. Is that when they broke up? Yeah.
And you got the double neck SG.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Love this one. Love this one too, of course. As we are heading down the home stretch here, just 1 or 2 more. Okay. Love this one.
John Lee Hooker and Keith Richards photographed at Russian Hill Recording Studios in San Francisco, and they just were doing their thing with Keith doing the French inhale. Yeah, pretty epic.
Hey, Rich Zoller, our friend, big supporter and fellow photographer. What was the photo taken with, the Zeppelin photo?
Nikon.
Right on.
Yeah, FE2 probably.
I know that you are out there still, and you're in the mix, and you're kind of
that's a funny picture.
You go to a lot of the Sphere shows and all. Like, what do you attribute your passion that you still have for this particular scene and your beloved figure within that community?
Well, first of all, I want to say that this particular photograph is me on Halloween, so I'm a little bit overdressed there with my psychic. I don't normally do that when I'm working.
Even Maury Dawn likes the purple pants.
But purple pants I love. But yeah. What was your question?
Just
Oh, what?
all these years
Why
later.
do I still do this?
Yeah.
Because it still turns me on, and I'm still inspired by it. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's hey, did you know our old friend in New York hardcore did you know Chris Shiruki?
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, Shiruki was a New York hardcore guy.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
fuck Shiruki, you know. I mean, no, I've got lots of pictures of Shiruki.
He was in the trenches with us here in the early New York hardcore scene. And
I guess I knew that. They talked about that. Did you go to his funeral?
I did not. No.
Okay.
I did not. But I mean,
because there were some old punk rock friends of his there for sure. I was there.
Shiruki sang for Cause for Alarm, and Shiruki's story is incredible. He was a hardcore guy. And then he kind of, I guess he got a gig being like a loader at the Warfield, and that led to this and led to
and
that.
Then he became a monitor engineer at the Warfield.
That's
he
right.
Worked for Primus, and then Bob Weir snatched him up, and he worked for Bobby until he died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was
Shiruki. Oh yeah, one of a kind.
Yep. What does the future hold for Jay Blakesberg? What are your hopes and dreams?
The future's so bright, you got to wear shades. I just hope that, knock on wood, my health stays good. I can still keep taking pictures, keep having fun, keep getting to make a living doing what I love, and, just keep on going down the road feeling bad.
Good. Thanks a lot for coming on, Jay. And, I'll see you. I'll see you down the road in the attics. I'll see you down the road in the attics of my life, bro.
Exactly. Can't wait to meet you in person, Drew. Right. Where do you live now?
I'm in the Upper West Side of Manhattan.
All right. Well, next time I'm in the city, I'll give you a holler.
Please. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.
Talk to you soon, Jay.
Cheers.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Ooh, fantastic. Jay Blakesberg, ladies and gentlemen. What a great guest. And I really enjoyed that one. That one meant a lot to me, everybody. So, thank you, Courtney. This one, that man's a talent. He's fantastic. And listen, when I saw the punk book, I'm like, that's my in. Get him on the show. Thanks, Brian, and thanks, Paul. Thanks, Pat and Chris and everybody else. Yeah, it was a good one, man. Yep. Yeah, I tied it in, right? I tied it all in. Fantastic show. Thank you. Rich in music history. Of course, that's what we do, man. Thank you, Francis. He was a great guest, and it was right, incredibly diverse. By the way, those out there that may not know, I didn't get to this, but Jay has an incredible book on kind of like his history of Grateful Dead photography. Between the dark and the light. And a lot of people know this, forward by Phil Lesh and edited by Blair Jackson. This really put him on the map for a lot of us, when that came across our radar screen. So that said, I'm going to the recording studio tonight, Incendiary Device. It's our last session before it goes to the mix. And yes, the record is being mixed by Dan Kornoff and Zum, Neil Osberg, the same guys who did the last record. Dan Kornoff, of course, My Chemical Romance, Papa Roach, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, Lori Dawn, how you doing? Everything okay?
That was a great show. Oh, my God.
That's great.
Those stories, man.
Yeah, it's great. He's like
just the entrepreneurship of like high school students, just getting like, thousands of whatever you call it, things of doses of LSD.
Yeah. Yes, your dad has that. Yes, that's him. That's Jay's book.
Amazing.
Jay, I feel like I had a lot in common with Jay. We're almost the same age. We rode the rails with the Grateful Dead, following the Grateful Dead as young people, and had a lot of experiences,
I kind of, music is just, I always find it strange when people are like, I only listen to this. I only listen to that. I understand that everybody has a favorite,
Sure.
mostly go to a certain kind of show and whatever, but to say that you won't listen to something, just because it's not this or it's not that or it's not tough or whatever. I don't know. I think it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that I mentioned that earlier. It's a big moment for me as a young person when I mentioned this before, and it's in the book that I'm writing. I expound on a little bit more about how, listen, I came up, I knew the Grateful Dead and all, like their music and everything, and never, when I got into hardcore and punk, I didn't turn my back on it. I still went to Dead shows. I still loved the Dead, but this was being done by a lot of kids my age, hardcore, and I fell in love with that. And I'd go to the Dead shows with a shaved head, and people, my old Deadhead friends, would be like, "Yo, what happened to you? This and that. You can't like that kind of music. Yes. You can't, you can." And then I'd come back, and my hardcore friends would be like, "You were where?
Yeah,
at a Grateful Dead show? What?" You know, and they both said the same thing, and I was sort of like confused and stuck in the middle. And I realized at that young age, you have to please yourself, and you have to go. You have to do what your heart brings you, and try to transcend what people's expectations of you are.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're all looking for identity and tribes when we're young. We're all looking to fit in someplace, but it's a kind of gatekeep each other, because it's like you're into metal one day, but you're wearing a DOA shirt the next day. Which is kind of what happened to me.
The world. Yeah, like that. Fish is a band no one should like. You know what? I agree with you on that one, kind of. I will see you, Lori, at Elise's birthday bash.
Yes.
We hope to see a couple more of you up there as well. I'll be up there with my wife.
Yes, we can't wait. Your better half.
There you go. All right, I'll see you up there, Lori.
Great. So, bye everyone.
That wraps up the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for supporting the show. I hope I brought some joy to your life today. You certainly brought some to mine. Listen, a lot of people have passed recently. All the more so, tell your loved ones that you love them. Time is short. This is important stuff. And until next time, do good things, and good things will come to you.
Conditioned by indoctrination, conditioned by society. You're a victim of the digital age, a 21st century casualty. Open your eyes, you're losing control.